All right, multiplying or dividing sign numbers, just like when we were adding or subtracting them, is really just a couple of rules. The nice thing about this is the rules are very, very simple. If we have like signs, the answer is positive, and if we have unlike signs, the answer is negative. Now notice this is the same rule for both multiplying and dividing. So if you're either multiplying two numbers that have the same signs, the answer is positive, or if you're dividing two numbers with the same signs, the answer is also positive. So let's just take a look at a few examples of these. So again, if we had something like negative 2 times 3. Just like before, we tell the sign of the number by looking directly in front of it, so that's a negative 2 and a positive 3. Those things have unlike signs, so before I do anything, I know the answer is going to be negative. And then all you do is multiply like you normally would. 2 times 3 would be 6. So if I had, let's say, negative 4 times negative 5. So when we're multiplying, again, that's a negative 4 because there's a negative directly in front of it. That's a negative 5 because there's a negative directly in front of it. Here, these two things have like signs. They're both negative numbers, so my answer is going to be positive. Now, again, we generally don't write the positive like that, so we just write nothing. So the answer is going to be positive. 4 times 5 is 20. Now, of course, it doesn't matter if they're fractions or if there's decimals. So if we had 2/3 times negative 5/6. Again, that's a positive 2/3 and a negative 5/6. Since they have different signs, our answer is going to be negative. Now we could reduce first or just multiply straight across the top. I'm just going to go ahead and multiply across and we'll reduce. 5 times the 2 is 10. 3 times 6 is 18. Now, of course, this fraction will reduce. We reduce a 2 out of those. That would be what? 5 ninths. So negative 5 ninths. So the rules don't change if they're fractions or if they're decimals. The only rule that we need to learn today is you're multiplying sign numbers. They both have the same sign. The answer is positive. If they have opposite signs, the answer is negative. Same goes for division. There's a couple of different ways that we can write this. We could do like 24 divided by negative 8. So we have a positive divided by a negative, so we know our answer is going to be negative. 24 divided by 8 would be 3. So again, unlike signs, our answer is negative. 24 divided by 8 is 3. Or we could be written as a fraction like 49 divided by negative 7. So a positive divided by a negative, I know my answer is going to be negative. And then we would reduce this fraction. Well, of course, this is just 49 divided by 7, which is 7. So doesn't matter if it's multiplication or division. If you have like signs, the answer is positive. If you have unlike signs, the answer is negative. So let me give you a few of these to try. Take a look at one more thing. All right, so let's see if I gave you, start with something easy. 4 times. Let's see. And how about all right, so again, it looks like there's about 5 or 6, 7. There's a bunch up there. Hit pause, go see how you can do, and come on back when you're done. All right, so hopefully you're back. Hopefully these went fairly well. Let's start with this. Here we're just multiplying two numbers together. They're both positive, so our answer is going to be positive. 4 times 3 would be 12. Here we're multiplying two numbers together. That's a negative 6 and a negative 5. They're both negative, so our answer is going to be positive. 6 times 5 would be 30. All right, here we're just multiplying two things together. They're both positive, so we know our answer is going to be positive. And if you wanted to here, we didn't last time, but let's reduce here. 2 reduced with the 2. So if we multiply straight across the top, we get 1/3. Now, if you went ahead and multiplied across and got 2/6 and then reduced, that's fine. All right, here we have a -2 and a +4. They have different signs, so my answer is going to be negative. 2 times 4 is 8. Here we have division. That's a +16 and a -8. We have a positive and a negative, so our answer is going to be negative. 16 divided by 8 would be 2. All right, again, division. Remember, fraction really is division, so that's -32 divided by +4. So a negative divided by a positive is going to give me a negative because they're unlike signs. 32 divided by 4 would be what, 8? Here we have a -20 divided by -5. Since they're both negatives, my answer is going to be positive. 20 divided by 5 would be 4. All right, again, notice it's just applying our two rules that we have. If you're either multiplying or dividing and they have the same signs, your answer is going to be positive. If they have opposite signs, they're going to be negative. All right, now let's take a look at how this works, and it's really not any different when we have exponents. Exponents and our sign numbers. Now, the biggest and the hardest part to understand is when we have something like -3 squared. You might want to write this out so you can see what it means. This says do -3 times -3. They're both negative, so we know our answer is positive. 3 times 3 is 9. So if I said -5 to the third, again, that's -5 times -5 times -5. All right, well, you might actually have to do this in more than one step if you haven't already seen what's going to happen. You just multiply them together. You got to do 2 at a time. So with -5 times -5, these two, here's what I'm doing first. These two, they're both negative, so the answer to this multiplication is going to be positive. 5 times 5 is 25 times -5. Now we have a positive times a negative, so we know our answer is going to be negative. And 5/4 is 1/25. Okay, so if you have an exponent, you can go ahead and expand it out and do 2 at a time. There's kind of an easy way to see what's going to happen here. Let's say we had -2 to the 4th, though. It's -2, -2, -2, -2. You can kind of think about it like this. To get a positive number, you have to have 2 negatives to make it a positive. Now notice here we had 3 negatives. Well, 2 of the negatives made a positive, and then another negative made the answer negative. So what do you think is going to happen down here? Well, we have 4 negatives. Kind of think about them as pairing up to make positives. So these 2 negatives are going to make a positive. These 2 negatives are going to make a positive, and a positive times a positive is going to be a positive. So we know just by looking at this, our answer in the end is going to be positive. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 would be 16. All right, so if you have a negative, kind of easy way to remember this, if you have a negative to an even power, the answer is positive. And if you have a negative to an odd power, the answer is going to be negative. Now there is something that's a little bit confusing when we're looking at sign numbers and exponents. These two things right here, like -2 squared and -2 squared, these are not the same thing. This says, since it's in parentheses, to do -2 times -2. This says what's the opposite of 2 squared. So here, the negative's kind of out front of the exponent, like if I were to write it farther away, right? The only thing that's being raised to that exponent is the 2. The negative is out front. So in this case, this negative is inside parentheses, so it's being included to that exponent. So a negative times a negative is a positive, so that's a positive 4. But here we have 2 times 2 is 4 with a negative out front. So for a negative to be included in an exponent, it has to be in parentheses. So there's a big difference between those two statements. So be careful for that in your homework.